Hello, everybody. Simon Dixon here. I am getting a lot of work done at home at the moment, so you can probably see a lot of mess in the background. But I wanted to jump onto a video to record a subject that I've been thinking a lot about recently, and that is how you, as an individual, and also at the government level, because obviously we'd like society not to enter into a really bad state of being as a result of the large regulated Ponzi scheme that we're currently operating in that we call global finance. If you're not familiar with some of my other content, we're currently operating as a world, thanks to financial engineering, in a $250 trillion Ponzi scheme. The numbers are absolutely staggering and baffle the mind. But the level of debt that we have as a nation now is approaching $250 trillion. What that means to us as a society is that we found ourselves in a ginormous regulated Ponzi scheme, perpetuated by essentially a partnership between government agencies and the private banking sector, whereby over time financial engineering has meant that we've separated. We used to have separation between the process of creating money and actually issuing loans, but those have been combined over time. You can check out some other videos on some of the important parts about that and how it's actually evolved. But the Ponzi scheme is, in its simplest terms, as follows. We found ourselves in an economy whereby all money is debt, and that has two problems. One is that in order to have more money in an economy, you have to have more debt. So if a government is trying to grow an economy, it has to figure out how to have more money in that economy. And the only way to get more money is to have more debt, because the government has outsourced the ability to create money to the private banking sector. And every time you as an individual take on a loan, it creates new money. And that is the money creation process that society has agreed upon over time. And so we're in that now, and then we have $250 trillion of debt. And if you want to increase the money supply in order to, continue pushing stock markets up to new all-time high, so everybody can be happy, then you're going to have more debt. So you tend to get an increase in the bond markets where the governments are borrowing it, and essentially they're taking all of your pension money and your insurance money and using it in order to lend to the government in the bond markets, or your pension money is being used in order to invest into higher and higher yielding or stocks that are being pushed up to all new time highs, like we're seeing with companies like Tesla and Virgin Galactic is the latest one, or sorry, Virgin. And essentially, money is being borrowed at a very cheap rate, and then pushed into the stock markets, which is pushing up markets into all new time highs, making everybody feel better, feeling like it's generating more wealth because more money is being created, the debt's going up. And then individuals at the individual level, they're all taking on more money on credit cards, and they're spending more on their credit cards, or they're taking out consumer loans, or they're taking out student loans, feeling more educated, and then getting a big mortgage. And then when they get that big mortgage, they spend the rest of their life trapped in debt for pretty much forever in most cases. And so this is the cycle. And then we've got the same at the corporate and business level, the government level, and now the central bank level with things like quantitative easing, leading to this $250 trillion of a Ponzi scheme whereby in order to have more money, we have to have more debt. At the same time, the 2007, 2008 financial crisis imploded the entire global financial system because we had too much debt. And so when you have too much debt, you have people defaulting on their debt. And when they default on their debt, it means that the money disappears. So if you want to have, that's the second thing. The first thing is, if you want to have more money, you have to have more debt in the current system. And if you want to have less debt, you have to have less money. And so you enter into a deflationary business cycle whereby people are either defaulting on their debt, paying down their debt. And when they default on their debt or pay down their debt, you end up with a deflationary effect on the economy, less money in the economy, more people holding on to their money, and therefore less people borrowing. And when you have less people borrowing, you have a crash of the economy. And these two forces make up the Ponzi scheme and what we call in economics the business cycle. And so you use different tools like interest rates in order to encourage people to take on debt, and then take the same people that took on the debt bankrupt by putting up interest rates where they can no longer afford them. And you get this boom bust cycle. And this is what we call the world's largest regulated Ponzi scheme in the history of our entire universe that we have ever seen. And so really, we're going to enter into these systemic risk events whereby the effects of having too much debt in a particular sector or a particular niche or a particular industry, whether that be credit card debt, whether that be subprime debt was the last one, whether that be debt in a tiny little economy like Iceland's caused a big catastrophic effect, or whether it be Greece or Italy or Eurozone or whatever it may be, get these systemic risk events. And so, really, how does one protect themselves from that? And I'm going to discuss two ways to protect yourself from this ginormous regulated Ponzi scheme. And one that can happen at the individual level. So, you as an individual, what you can do. And again, you can't take this as financial advice. There's a million things that can go and happen in an economy. But these are the types of things that I think about, and I think a hedge that people should be exploring as this economy evolves and things unwind themselves in this ginormous Ponzi scheme we found ourselves in. And the second is at the government level, and I believe that both of these are going to happen. I'm not sure exactly when they're going to happen, but I believe at the next systemic risk event, they're going to happen in a big way, and I believe everybody should be preparing for these effects. And getting themselves in a position where they're not trying to reposition in a panic or a crisis mode, which is what can happen during these, systemic shock events, where one event in the financial system triggers a ripple effect across all these different parts of the financial system, all glued together by this large regulated Ponzi scheme called fiat currency. The first thing that can happen is that the more and more people that own Bitcoin, which is a currency that exists outside of the regulated Ponzi scheme called fiat money. And there is a challenge with Bitcoin in that it does the opposite of what fiat money does. So at the individual level, you as an individual, you have in the traditional fiat Ponzi scheme, your best strategy is to take on as much debt as possible. The reason being is because the value is being debased over time. And so therefore your savings get worse and worse. And in this traditional Ponzi scheme, you end up in a really, you're driven into debt. That is the optimum strategy in a regulated Ponzi scheme, like this $250 trillion one we have right now. And it encourages you to take on debt rather than save, because saving means more and more of your family have to work and hard in order to try and save. And then you put it into the markets, and then the markets are rehypothecated, and then you put some into your pension, and you put some into insurance premiums, and then that perpetuates the market and perpetuates the Ponzi scheme. So you have to be a participant and play the debt game. And therefore, many people try and get on the property ladder in order to try and just beat the effects of ever increasing property prices. And then you end up in debt for the rest of your life, paying down that mortgage. Well, one thing you can do is a decision that many people made over the last years being involved in the Bitcoin community is some decided to hold their savings in Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, from the last 12 years of its existence, has been the highest performing asset class for 10 of the last 12 years. It's produced 9 million% returns for anybody that's held that over the last 10 years. And what the effect is, as people have generated wealth, some people sold their Bitcoin and put it in a mortgage, for example. And so they exchanged their savings-based asset for a debt-based asset in order to gain home ownership, because they felt like that was the right thing to do. But Bitcoin outperformed that. Whereas what they could have done, other people that I've met, they held their Bitcoin and they got themselves in a position whereby they could just buy their house outright without the mortgage, and therefore get out of the debt Ponzi scheme. Now, you're still playing the real world. The real world still works off fiat. But what they've done is, because they invested their savings outside of the regulated Ponzi scheme. Over 10 of the last 12 years has been the highest performing asset, and therefore they use their gains in order to purchase their house outright so that they had the security that they needed. And that meant that they never had to enter the debt Ponzi scheme cycle in order to purchase their house. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen again. There's a million things that can go wrong in this equation. There's a load of effects, but we have to appreciate that everybody in all of their decisions that they make every day is speculating, and you have to make a conscious decision about which way you're going to speculate. If you take a decision to hold your money at a bank, you're speculating on the credit risk of the regulated Ponzi scheme. If you're holding your money in Bitcoin, you're speculating on whether this thing can become sound money. There's a lot of questions around that, but it's a speculation, and you have to take educated bets. If you put your money in property, whether you take a mortgage or you buy it outright, is a speculation on property ownership versus whether the mortgage cycle, what happens next in that mortgage cycle. And so really what is an interesting force is that because Bitcoin gives people the ability to own their own money, spend their own money, and has a fixed monetary policy, that if the utility increases over time, gives people essentially a savings-based economy where it rewards the saver as more and more Bitcoins get more and more rare and more scarce. The only way that a scarce asset can meet the demands of more and more people as the utility of that network gets bigger and bigger and bigger is by people paying more and more for it. And as people pay more and more for it in this marketplace for this 21 million Bitcoins, that essentially lots of them have been lost and many of them are never going to move, and 18 million of them have been mined and allocated already, and there's only 3 million more of them, is you enter in, and this year the supply of additional Bitcoins every 10 minutes gets cut in half. You end up in this marketplace whereby people are competing in order to try and accumulate and scoop up those Bitcoins. And this is why it's been compared to, a speculative form of sound money. Is people call it a store of value. Gold is a store of value because it's about maintaining value. But because Bitcoin has more of a speculative store of value effect, i.e. the world hasn't figured out that it is a store of value yet, it creates this increase in price effect as more and more people discover that this can actually be a store of value in the future. And so what becomes interesting about this is that as more and more people enter into the Bitcoin economy, and as the utility increases in a fixed supply, people end up with these wealth effects. They could end up actually extinguishing their debt. And as they extinguish their debt, so as at the moment, the market cap of Bitcoin is give or take 150 billion to 200 billion dollars. It went up in its peak up to about 700 billion dollars or so. Keys and numbers, I haven't checked those exactly. But as this goes, and more people want to get Bitcoin, then as the effect of Bitcoin, the market capitalization enters into $1 trillion or $2 trillion or 3 to 5 or 10 trillion dollars. Then you start to get this effect whereby the wealth effect of those that got into into it early can use portions of their Bitcoin to extinguish their fiat debt, as we saw with some of the people that went about buying their property outright rather than actually going through the mortgage process. And what this does is it has a counter effect on the fiat regulated Ponzi scheme, i.e. the more that people pay down their debt, the lower the money supply becomes. And so this $250 trillion gradually decreases at a small scale. And you end up with a negative effect on the fiat economy. Because essentially money being paid down, remember the rules of the fiat regulated Ponzi scheme. In order to have more money, you have to have more debt. If you have less debt, you have less money. So as people earn wealth in asset classes that exist outside of the traditional financial system and pay down debts with the traditional financial system, you end up with an increase in the market cap here, a decrease in the money supply here, and a negative effect on the eventual the economy. This is what we call a ginormous wealth divide that can emerge between those who have Bitcoin and those who don't have Bitcoin. And this could be a very, very catastrophic effect for those that don't have versus those that do. But this is a natural effect, a natural phenomenon as a result of this technology existing and the utility of it and the fact that it's decentralized and can't be shut down. This is a natural thing. So as an individual, it's not really a question of do you believe in Bitcoin or do you not. It's a fact of reallocating how much you're willing to bet on the fact that the government are going to keep a $250 trillion regulated Ponzi scheme alive. And it's also a bet that people aren't going to generate wealth in other places, which actually ends up paying down the debt. And as the down of debt happens, then you have a shrinking of the money supply, which means it has a disastrous effect on the traditional financial system. Because as you have less money, as you have less debt, you have less money. And therefore, it's kind of a two-way bet that you need to take here. Now, obviously, governments are not going to allow this to happen. Governments are going to want to, if we've learned anything over the last 100 years, is that they'll use financial engineering in order to prop up the system and keep it going a little bit longer. So at the very same time, you're going to have another effect at the government level. And that government level is figuring out what they're going to do with that $250 trillion of debt. They can't let it disappear. Remember, they can't pretend. If a government tells you that they're looking to pay down their national debt, what they're saying is they're looking to shrink the money supply, crash the economy, kill the banks, and tear down the entire financial system. So if you believe a government when they say that they're looking to pay down their national debt, you can't believe that because it can't be done without tearing down the entire economy, which would lose them their votes, and somebody else would come along and prop up the economy, saying, "I'll spend more, I'll take on more debt, I'll give you more goods, I'll give you more things," and perpetuate the Ponzi scheme a little bit further. So if the government can't pay it down, what are they going to do? Well, all they can do is, in order to keep some kind of sustainability in the world that we know today, is they can only replace one form of debt-based money with another form of non-debt-based money. And I think that the way that they're going to do that is they're going to allow the next financial crisis as a mechanism, as I've talked about in previous videos, to use central bank digital currencies to allow banks to go bust, so that you can essentially replace debt-based money with debt-free money. Now, this is going to affect the financial markets all around the world. So obviously, there's going to be a lot of speculation. What does it impact the stock market? How does it impact the debt capital markets? There's going to be lots of different effects here. But essentially, in order to remove inflation and deflation, just replace one form of money for another. Let me explain to that in simple terms. Let's say that you were banking with Chase Bank, and you had $10,000 in your Chase Bank account. Chase Bank got this toxic debt on their balance sheet, and they went to the government and said, "Please bail us out." The government said, "No, we're not bailing you out. There'll be riots on the streets. We're not giving you the money again." They said, "Well, we've got no choice then. We're going to have to bail in. We're going to have to take all the money from our customers because we don't have the ability to control this." And the customers will be, essentially that means it's the end of the financial system as we know that. If Chase Bank bail in and use their customers' deposits, it's the end of that bank, and it's the end of all the banks that this has a ripple effect on, and everybody loses their money. So then the government says, "Well, we don't want that to happen, because we've got this deposit insurance scheme, which is another Ponzi scheme. We would actually guarantee certain people's deposits up to a certain thing. But guess what? We don't have enough money to cover all the deposits of the entire banking system because we're operating off another Ponzi scheme. So therefore, we can't allow that to happen. What can we do? Well, let's make sure that consumers don't lose their money. What we can do is we can say, right, Chase Bank, you're gone. But anybody that has $10,000 or any amount, come here, download this app. We'll give you our stable coin on our central bank digital currency wallet. And whatever balance you had at that bank, you will now have on this wallet. And financial technology companies all around the world can build different applications that allow people to spend their central bank digital currency. But whatever money you had at that bank, you now have in this digital wallet. And essentially, all you've done is you've taken money that was backed by debt. Remember, all money in a bank was created by somebody else's debt. You've extinguished that supply and replaced it with money that was not created as debt. It was just the central bank saying that we will create a new money supply which is completely equal to the amount of debt in the world. So if all the whole world takes this $250 trillion of debt-based, there's different types of debts, obviously. I'm simplifying for the sake of understanding. But allows people to replace it with that central bank digital currency, then you end up in a world where you had people that were preparing through Bitcoin the fact that this sound money supply was going to exist in the future, and that there would be a financial system outside the traditional financial system. And then you would have all the governments that create their own central bank digital currencies. And you will be able to interoperate, excuse me, you'll be able to interoperate between these different types of currencies, and also other companies are going to come along and create their own stable coins and Facebook Libras and all this types of stuff. So these are the forces and effects that are actually going to come to be, I believe, in order to get out of this $250 trillion Ponzi scheme. The beautiful of this is that there will be really horrible forms of money that emerge and really beautiful forms of money that emerge. And people will have their choice of how they want to park themselves. Just going to take a quick drink. So what are some of the effects? Well, you can imagine the central bank digital currency is going to be interoperable between multiple governments. Excuse me. They'll have effects like, let's say you're in one country, let's say you're a UK resident, and you travel to Mexico in order to do a deal with somebody, and the person that you're transacting with is a Chinese resident. And you have three governments that all believe, well, you're a UK resident, I should get my tax. In Mexico, the deal happened, therefore we should get our tax. And in China, they believe they should get their tax. So they're all going to automate into central bank digital currency, automatically collect the tax. And you're going to have like three governments that all believe the tax is theirs. You might end up with three lots of governments that all take the money out because then haven't figured out or reached consensus on how to deal with global citizens now. You're either the money's held in escrow or it's actually just three governments have taken that money. And then you're disputing with these different central banks and government agencies. And then this is connected to your passport. So when you reach the border, they switch you off until the dispute resolution has happened. And it's going to be a very, very nasty world because essentially before money was one step removed from the government. Now you've connected directly central banks getting into retail banking as well. Companies are going to have to build technology and APIs and everything on top of it to comply with all these laws. So they're all going to be taking the money out automatically, and all sorts of, really crazy things are going to be happening in the future with this new evolution that we're experiencing with money. And then at the same time, you can have the ability to earn your own money, spend your own money, and have a monetary policy that's based upon sound principles, independent of governments. That's Bitcoin. And so more people are going to be using their Bitcoin wealth to collateralize fiat loans and all sorts of interesting technologies as the DeFi space evolves more and more and more as well. So those are just a couple of my random thoughts of two real forces. There's going to be either a wealth effect of sound money and Bitcoin, which is going to lead to the paying down of debt, which is going to lead to bad effects in the fiat money. And then when these bad effects, these ripple effects happen in the traditional financial system, due to the fact that it was built upon a fiat Ponzi scheme, you're going to have central bank digital currencies come along, allow the banks to go bust, replace one form of money with another form of money. And both ways, you have the only ways that I can think of counterforcing this $250 trillion regulated Ponzi scheme that we call fiat money, all perpetuated in a debt-based Ponzi scheme. So welcome your thoughts, and those are my random thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video.